We're now at Daf Samachayim and Beis, and we're explaining the Shita of Beit Shammai in a case where it was Lon Ima B'Pundaki after he delivered a get to him. We don't have edus that they actually had bia, and therefore there was no Masechet Kiddushin, no need for a get. Beis Hill Savri, on the other hand, Amrinon, we say that even though the Edom only saw the Yichud, that's equivalent to having seen the bia. It's absolutely clear to us that in the time of Yichud he had bia, and that's only a case after Nesuin where there's Libo Gaspa. Is Mamela, according to Beis Hill, the reason why she needs a second get is because we virtually have Edus on the Masechet Kiddushin, the Biel Shem Kiddushin. He remarried her. He's Mekayim the mitzvah of Matzah Gushasa, assuming he's not a Kohen. Modim, Vadai, Beniskashim and Erison, the law Amrin and they say ain't Libo Gaspa. But in the case of Erison, there's no Libo Gaspa, and therefore there's no reason to assume that since they had Yichud, they had Bia, and therefore she doesn't need a get. And all this is coming to explain the Mishnah, according to Rav Nachman, in the name of Shmuel, that we need Eidus L'Kiyum Adom. Rav Yisrael Bar Shmuel Bar Mata B'Shmei de Rav. Rav agrees with Shmuel. Hamakadish Beit Echad Ein Choshen L'Kiddushin Afilu Shnei Modim. Eid Echad is not enough, even though we have a birur, both he and she admit it. No one's makish the Eid Echad, but no, the Kiddushin is not valid. There were no two Eid. Omar Rav Rabba Bar Huna Hamakadish Beit Echad. Beit Dina Rabbi Amr Ein Choshen L'Kiddushin Man Beit Dina Rabba Rav. So we have now Rav agreeing with Shmuel. Okay, that's powerful. Rav and Shmuel both agree that you need two Eidim to generate a Chalos Ishus, to generate a Masechet Kiddushin. According to the second transmission of a Rav Bar of Huna Rav Hamakadish Beit Echad, Beit Dina Rabba Amri Ein Choshen L'Kiddushin Man Beit Dina Rabba Rebbe. According to a different transmission, it's the Bezdin of Rebbe HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. He's the one who, in his Bezdin, established that we're not Choshesh Kiddushin, even in a case where there was an Eid Echad, and even though, despite the fact that both he and she admitted there was Kiddushin. And that, I believe, is going to be the final halacha. If we have time, we'll look it up in Shulchan. Masiv Rav Achtevoy Bar Ami. What about the following brayso? Shnayim shebo Medinas Hayam. Oh, this is a whole story. 3 people come from Medinas Hayam, 2 men and 1 woman, and a chavilah, and a package of metaltalin that's worth money. Now, let's give them names. Reuven says, I married this girl, who's the third of the trio, we'll call her Leah, and this is my package. Shimon, the second guy, says, I married Leah, and this is my package. Leah says, I didn't marry neither Reuven nor Shimon, and this is my package. According to Reuven, Ishti, I married her. According to Shimon, I'm sorry. And Shimon, who is this guy Shimon who's coming with you? Avdi, he's my Eved Kanani. Vizu Chavilasi, and whose Chavilas? It's mine. That's Reuven's claim. Ze Omer, and Shimon's going to make the same claim. So Ishti, this Leah here, the third party, she's my wife. Vize Avdi, this guy Reuven is my Eved. And Zu Chavilasi, and this is my Chavilah. You know, a package of diamonds, imagine. The Isha Imoyim, Omer, she says, Elu Shnei Avdi, these are 2 avodim of mine. Vechavila Shali is my Chavila. Is Tricha Shnei Gittin. Right? She needs 2 Gittin from the 2 claimants, meaning from Reuven and Shimon. However, the good news is that she can get the Chavila, or at least part of the Chavila. Why? Because the Gova es Ksubasa Mina Chavila. Each one of these 2 guys, Reuven and Shimon, is admitting that he married her, and therefore when each one of them delivers a get, by virtue of his own confession, he has to pay the ksuba. Again, if the chavilah of diamonds is worth more than the ksuba, then the extra money has to be left until Eliyahu Hanavi will come and tell us who owns the extra money. But as far as the Masayim Zuz value of this chavilah, she collects it, as part of the collection of a ksuba. Tell me what's the case. Either islay sadi lahai, v'islay sadi lahai. If each one of these fellows, Reuven and Shimon, has two Eidim, which again that would be trey utrey, then mimatzis amra, can she say elu shnei avadai v'chavila shali? Each one, Reuven and Shimon, have edus to testify that she, Leah, is their wife, is his wife, and the chavila is his. How could she be believed? The Brisa seems to assume that what we have to do is we have to give her part of the chavila, which makes sense even if there were two Eidim testifying on behalf of Reuven and on behalf of Shimon. But what about the chavila? We're saying that the increment beyond the ksuba, let's say the chavila is worth 300, she gets 200 as ksuba. But the extra 100 above and beyond the ksuba, that has to be left for Eliyahu Hanavi. Why? It should be divided equally between Reuven and Shimon because each one has Eidim that it's his chavila. Elalav, therefore we have to assume the Eid Echad. Each one of these two gentlemen, whether it's Reuven or Shimon, has one Eid to testify and support his claim that she is his wife and that the chavila belongs to him. And now we see from this brisa that the Eid Echad is believed, and we rely on him to assume that there was Kiddushin, and therefore she needs a get. She needs a get from Reuven and a get from Shimon, even though Reuven and Shimon, each one of them only had one Eid to testify on behalf of his Kiddushin. So Gemara rejects this. The Tizbara, is it possible to understand the brisa in that way? Eid Echad B'Chosha. We have a principle, Eid Echad B'Chosha Lav Klumim. And now, if Reuven has an Eid testifying on his behalf, Shimon has an Eid on his behalf, then we throw out the Eidim completely. We don't believe either one of them because each one of the Eidim is Mukhash Al Yidei Ha'ed Hasheni. And both of them are not believed to say that she was married, and therefore she doesn't need to get even from one of them. And she denies the whole story. Ella, says the Gemara, she can marry anyone. She doesn't need a get. Why? Because but here the entire discussion is about the chavila. Hachikama. Tzricha shnei gitin. If she wants to substantiate her claim on the chavila, she's got to get a get from each one of them, and therefore she bites into the chavila a ksuba from Reuven and a ksuba from Shimon. So again, in a certain sense, I mean, again, we can analyze this point that I'm about to make. It's in her best interest to receive a get from Reuven and a get from Shimon, even though there's no evidence to establish that she needs a get, but that's her way of getting a ksuba from each one of them and collecting the chavilah. So as it turns out, these gittin that are going to be delivered to her by Reuven and Shimon respectively, that's mirtzona. That's their own bakosha, their response to the bakosha. And in a sense, if it's their own initiative, as we said before, they have to pay the ksuva because they're admitting that there was a marriage. So the Gemara says we have to add another stipulation to understand the chiddush here, and that is Rabbi Meir hi Yomi v'taltli v'shtabdi l'piron ksuba. The Chachamim said that ein isha govas ksubasim v'taltel. A woman can never collect her ksuba from metaltel. That has to do with a whole sugya of Shema Tzrari Atfaseh. But whatever it is, it's Rabbi Meir who says that a ksuba is collectible from metaltel. Okay, after this whole discussion about what's the nature of the requirement of Eidus and Kiddushin, what's the bottom line? My havi Allah. And the Gemara establishes a machlokas lahalocha l'maaseh. Rav Kana are in choshen Kiddushin. We need Eidus l'kiyum adover. Even if they both admit, and even if there was one aid, not enough. She doesn't need to get. Or a papa are choshen l'kiddushin. Now I want to share with you the insight of the Maharit, who lived, I think, about 6 centuries ago, the last of the Rishonim. He says that even according to Rav Papa, on a Doraisa level, there is no Kiddushin. Rav Papa also admits that Eidus in Kiddushin is Eidus L'Kiyum Adavar, without which there's no Kiddushin. But rather, Choshen L'Kiddushin Midir Rabbanan L'Chumra. So Rabbanan want to be Choshen L'Kiddushin because it really smells like Kiddushin. I mean, both he and she admit it, and the aid is testifying. Big Kiddush in the Mari. Now Rav Ashi asks the following kasha. Rav Ashi, Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana, you're such an adamant believer in the fact that ain't Choshen L'Kiddushin, even though it was done in front of one aid. Madatev. What would lead you to that conclusion that Eidus in Kiddushin is Eidus L'Kiyum Adavar? And the answer is the Alphas Davar Davar Mimama. Right? It says Al Pishnayim Eidim Yokum Davar and Tini Mamanos, and it says Ki Yimtza Ba Ervas Davar. So based on that Gzeira Shava, you want to conclude that we need to aid them in Kiddushin? Fine. But in Mala Halon, Hodas Baldin Kibei Eidim, Afkano Hodas Baldin Kibei Eidim. In the case of Al Pishnayim Eidim Yokum Davar Dini Mamanos, we have Allah of Hodas Baldin is Kibei Eidim Domi, meaning the requirement of Eidus in Dini Mamanos to force Reuven to pay Shimon is based on beer. And therefore, if he admits it, that's the greatest beer in the world. Is that if they both, he and she, admit that there's Kiddushin, then based on this Gzeira Shava, to Dini Mamanos, in Ishus as well, in Kiddushin as well, beer should be enough. And they both admit it. Amalei, so Rav Ashi responds, Awesome. Lo kachayvi lachrini. Hacha kachayvi lachrini. When is it sufficient that the Torah would rely on beer, and the requirement of Eidim is only Lebir, and therefore Das Baldin Kimei Eidim Dami? That's because no one loses. Only he's going to lose by admission. And the Torah is going to leave and rely on his beer. Odah Baldin. But in a case where the Odah is Chav Lachrini, in other words, when they're claiming that they're married, he and she, that has an implication for the entire world. Because no one's going to be able to marry him until he gives her a get. So therefore, it comes under a brand new halacha. This is what Rav Kahana is saying in defense of his position, that you need Eidus L'Kiyum Adavar. It's not a question of beer. Oh, if it's beer, well, they both admit. But now it's going to have repercussions for the ganze Welt. You know, it's like Bibi Netanyahu saying that the world has to fight against Hamas. And now the Gemara wants to know, when do you need Eidim to be Makayim L'Dover, even in Dini Mamanos? Mar Zutra, Rav Ada Saba, B'nei Rav Mari Bar Isu. So we have here Nechasim B'Shutfis. And now they back out of the Shutfis and how do you say bittul in English, and they nullify the Shutfis. And now they divide up the Shutfis. You take this amount of schora, I'll take this amount of schora. There were no Eidim there. Asul Kami de Rav Ashi, Vi Amrule. They said to him, look, Al Pishnayim Eidim Amrachmona Di Boil Meheda, Lo Motzi Hajibe, Vanan Lo Hajib. The entire requirement of 2 Eidim in Dini Mamanos is because we have an issue of beer. And if one person is makish, so we need 2 Eidim to testify that he's not telling the truth. But here we both admit that this was the Chalukas Hashut from Oduma to Lo Makaimi Milsa El Besadi. Lo Makaimi Milsa El Besadi. Pillei Ploim. If Reb Chaim Brisker was here in the room, I would ask him, how do you understand this Gemara? And the Gemara is saying that there's a Havamina that Eidus and Dini Mamanis is Eidus Le Makaimi Milsa L'Kiyum Adavar. What are you going to do with Hodas Baldin Kibei Eidim Domi? I don't understand. And the Gemara gives the answer that Eidus and Dini Mamanis is only Lebira Adavar, the famous Gemara. Rav Soloveitchik used to mention this Gemara all the time. Amar Lahulo Ibru Sadi L'Shakri. The Torah requires Eidus and Dini Mamanis L'Shakri. In other words, to clarify the truth. So if it's a matter of clarification, not constructive but clarification, then it's Eidus Lebira Adavar. And if they both admit that this was the Chaluk of the Shutfim, then it's Chal. And now the Gemara goes on and I think we're going a little bit over time today. I'll accept my apologies. And gives a whole long list of dinim that are formulated by Abaye, in which the Torah does rely on one aid. The first on the list is a chiyuv korban chatos, when the aid testifies that Ploni violated a chiyuv karis b'shogeg. Omar Abaye, Omar lo. An aid comes to Reuven and says, Reuven, achalta chela b'shogeg, and therefore you have to bring a korban. What was Reuven's response? Halo shosek. He said nothing. Neman. We trust the aid. I don't understand this Gemara. Rabbi Rhodes, you're going to have to help me understand this Gemara. What do you mean you trust the aid? Forget about the aid. The man was shosek. If Reuven was shosek, then we apply the principle of shtika kodah damyu. Does Rashi mention shtika kodah? Let me just see. No, Rashi doesn't seem to mention shtika kodah. It seems from the Masechet that there's a Rashi later on in Daf Samach Vav, Dibra Mastel Utsricha. Let's see if we could quickly find such a Rashi. Oh, Utsricha. Look at that. Pilei Ployim. 3 lines down from the top of Samach Vav and Aleph. Rashi Dibra Maskel Utsricha. And Rashi says, Tishti Kaso Hodahi. When the Eid Echad comes in and he doesn't reject the words and deny the words of the Eid Echad, then it's Kodadam, Shtika Kodadam. It's a famous principle all over Shas. So I don't understand what the Gemara means. Neman. What do you mean Neman? Abai saying that we believe the Eid? Forget about the Eid. I mean, what happened if I don't know if there was a voice that came down from Shemayim and said you ate Chelek, B'shogeg, and he says, oh yeah. I don't know why it's Nemanis of the Eid. I can't figure this Gemara out. Like I couldn't figure out the Havamina that you need Eidus L'Kiyum Adover and Dini moments. B'tana Tuna, Abai brings a Mishnah in Masechet Krisus on Daf Yud Alpha base to prove his point. Amalo Eid Echad and Eid Echad says to Reuven, Achalta Chel Fala, and what was the response of Reuven? Omer Lo Achalti Patur. Says Abai, the only reason why he's patur from the korban chatos is because he denied the aid. Taima, the Amar Lo. He said Lo Achalti. Ishtik, had he said nothing, Mehemen ha'aid. Again, we believe the aid. What happened here? Rashi says Hodah Spaldin. It's Shtika Kodah. Very strange. I mean, I'm going to tell you what the mathematical conclusion is, but I don't understand it at all. There's a combination of 2 factors here, A plus B. A is the aid and his nemonis, and B is the shtika. I don't understand. If shtika kodah, I don't know why we need the aid. But somehow it's the shtika to the nemonis, to the aid. I have no idea how to juggle this. Oh, I'll buy another thing. Your taros, your ochlin are tmein. A sheretz fell on top of after there was mukshal lekabel tulim. V'Allah shosek, and the other one is shosek. Is neman v'tonatun, and I have a mishnah taros perkei to support this. Eid echad omer nitmu, v'Allah omer lo nitmu. Tar. He has a right to be machish the eid echad. Time of the reason why he's believed and his food remains tar is the Amar Lo, because the Bailam said it's not true, and he's makish the Eidechad. Ha-ishtik, had he said nothing, Meheman. Over and over again, Abai used the word Meheman, we believe the Eid. The Amar Abai in another din, Amar Lo Eidechad, here we turn to Samach Vav Shorcha Nirva. Your shor had an active sodomy with a man, and therefore it's Posel Akrova. As far as skila is concerned, the Mishnah says at the beginning of Sanhedrin, you need 2 Eidim to establish that the shor is Chayav Misa in front of a basin of 23 judges. But at least as far as Psul Karban, which is only Surim, we could believe Eid Echad. Halash Shosek, Neman. Neman again, the same word Neman over and over again. He's believed. The Eid Echad is believed. V'tana tuna, we learned in the Mishnah in B'choros Daf Mem Aleph, v'shenevda bo avera, v'shehemis al pi eid echad or al pi bailim nema. So what's going on over here? Nevda bo avera means there was a sodomist relationship, or the animal killed a person, and it was all al pi eid echad. And then it says al pi bailim. Hi, al pi eid echad hechidami. What does it mean al pi eid echad? Either komodu the bailim, if the bailim admit that their shark either killed a man or was nirva to a man, then Hainu al pi bailim, I don't need the aid. It's just very similar. The Gemara is now very close to asking my question. In other words, why do you separate these two categories? Al pi eid echad, and then you have al pi bailim. If the bailim admit, hodah b'peh, and they say, yes, my shar killed a person, my shar was nirva, then that's al pi bailim. I don't need al pi eid echad. Elolav says Abaye, it must be the shasik. He says nothing. So the bailim say nothing about the shar. So why does the shar have a din of posel mizbeach, meaning we believe that the shar is a nirva? And the answer is because the eid echad testifies and he was shosek. So therefore, there's nemonis to the eid echad to posel this shar from akrav al gabi mizbeach utzricha. And Abai had to teach me each one of these cases, and that Be'ezra Hashem will see tomorrow. So this is where we got up to here on Daf Samach Vav, Amid Aleph, Utzricha. Wishing you a quiet, uneventful evening.